Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to explain while loops. A while loop is much like an if statement, except we can repeat some code potentially an infinite amount of times. Here's an example of where a while loop would be useful. Let's say that we'll have a user enter in their name. Standard, string, name. At first I'll use an if statement. If name, I'll check to see if the name is empty. Did the user actually type in something? If name is empty, we'll create a prompt. Standard output, enter your name. Standard getLine, standard input, name. Once we exit the if statement, we'll display a message. Alright everybody, do while loops. A do while loop, it does some block of code first, and then you repeat that block of code if a condition is true. Here's an example. Let's write a program that will ask a user to enter in a positive number. First we'll use a while loop. That'll demonstrate how a do while loop would actually be better for the situation. We have an integer number, int number. I'll write a while loop. While number is less than 0, we will prompt the user to enter in a positive number. Enter a positive number. Okay, standard input number. Outside of the while loop, at the end of our program, let's display the number. Standard output, the number is number. So this isn't going to work normally. Here's why. Let's run this. The number is 0. So this is what's going on. We've declared our number, but have not assigned a value quite yet. When we reach the while loop, we check the condition. If the condition is true, we execute this block of code. Since we've declared an integer variable, but have not assigned it a value, it's defaulting to just 0. 0 is not less than 0, so this condition is false. That means we skip the while loop and continue on. Another way in which we could write this, but it's not the best solution, is that we could copy what's within this block of code, then run it once. If number is still less than 0, we would then execute this block of code repeatedly. Let's try this again. Okay, enter a positive number, 1, 2, 3. The number is 1, 2, 3. Let's type in a negative number, -1. Enter a positive number, -1. Enter a positive number, -1. So I can't actually continue until I enter in a positive number. You know, this does work, but there's a much better way of writing this because, you know, we're repeating at least 2 lines of code when we really don't need to. We need to run this block of code once and then repeat it if this condition is true. Well, you know what would be great for that? A do while loop. Let's eliminate these 2 lines of code. To create a do while loop, we will move this condition to the end. While, then our condition, preceding the left curly brace, right, do. Do this code once, and then check the condition. Make sure you have a semicolon at the end. Let's try it again. Enter a positive number. I'm just going to type in a negative number. -1, nope. -1, nope. How about a positive number? 1, 2, 3. The number is 1, 2, 3. So that's a do while loop. You do some block of code first, then you repeat it again if the condition is true. It's an optional way to repeat some code. One good use of a do while loop that comes to mind, maybe we're playing a game. We would like to run the game once. At the end of the game, a user can choose if they would like to play again. Based on the user's input, if they would like to play again, we can run the game one more time, repeatedly. So that's a do while loop, everybody. I'll post this code in the comments section down below. And well, yeah, that's a do while loop in C++. Alright guys, in this video I'm going to explain for loops. A for loop is a loop that will execute a block of code a specified amount of times. To create a for loop, we type for, parentheses, curly braces. Within the for loop, there are up to 3 statements that we can add. The first is that we can create an index, a sort of counter. Int, index. I'll set this equal to be, we'll start at 1. Then finish the statement with a semicolon. Now what a lot of people do, instead of saying index, they'll just shorten this to I. The second statement is a stopping condition. Let's count up to 3. I'll continue this as long as I is less than or equal to 3. Then semicolon to finish that statement. The third statement is that we can increment or decrement our counter, our index. I'll increment my index by 1 by saying I++. Okay, let's repeat something 3 times. Standard, output. How about Happy New Year? Happy New Year. This code should be repeated 3 times. Happy New Year, Happy New Year, Happy New Year. I should probably add a new line. Now let's try this 5 times. We'll begin I at 1. We'll continue this as long as I is less than or equal to 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's it. This time, let's count up to 10, then display Happy New Year once we exit out of the for loop. I'll move this line to outside of the for loop. I'll set I to be 1. We'll continue this as long as I is less than or equal to 10. During each iteration of the for loop, I will display whatever I is. Standard, output, I. Then I'll add a new line. Okay. Here we go. We're starting at 1, then we're counting up to 10, then we escape the for loop. Once we escape the for loop, then we print Happy New Year. When you increment or decrement your counter, you can skip iterations. Let's increase I by 2 after each iteration. I plus equals 2. Now we're counting up by 2s. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, Happy New Year. We can even set our index to be a different number. Let's begin at 0. We're still counting up by 2s. 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Happy New Year. We could even increment I by 3. 0, 3, 6, 9, Happy New Year. Or we could decrement and go backwards. I minus minus. This time we will begin at 10, then continue as long as I is less than or equal to 0. So this would be a countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Happy New Year. Okay, let's decrement I by 2 after each iteration. I minus equals 2. 10, 8, 6, 4, 2, 0. Happy New Year. So yeah, everybody, that's a for loop. There's a lot of overlap where you could use either a while loop or a for loop. For loops tend to be better in situations where you only need to repeat code a certain amount of times. Your assignment is to post a use of the for loop in the comment section down below. And And well, yeah, those are for loops in C++. 10-8-6-4-2-0. Happy New Year. So yeah, everybody, that's a for loop. There's a lot of overlap where you could use either a while loop or a for loop. For loops tend to be better in situations where you only need to repeat code a certain amount of times. Your assignment is to post a use of the for loop in the comment section down below. And well, yeah, those are for loops in C++. Hey everybody, so in this video I'm going to explain the break and the continue keywords. The break keyword will break out of a loop. Another place where you see this is a switch within a switch statement. Continue will skip the current iteration. Here's an example. Let's create a for loop that will count up to the number 20. I'll set I equal to be 1. I will continue this as long as I is less than or equal to 20. Then increment I by 1. Standard output, I'll display whatever I is. Then I'll add a new line. New line. Then let's take a look. So we have the numbers 1 through 20. I would like to skip the number 13 because 13 is considered an unlucky number. I know it's a weird example. What I'll do is use an if statement within my for loop. If I is equal to 13, first we'll break, then see what happens. If we break where I equals 13, then we have the numbers 1 through 12. Once we hit 13, we break out of the loop. We do not finish the rest of the iterations. If we replace break with continue, this is instead what happens. We have the numbers 1 through 20, but the number 13 isn't there. So using the continue keyword, we skip the current iteration. So yeah, that's the break and the continue keyword. Keywords. These keywords are available if you need them, but where you'll use them, it really depends. But just so you know, they exist. And that is the break and the continue keywords in C++.
Ready to discover your study path but unsure how? At Open Universities Australia, take our short quiz and we'll deliver personalised.
Alright guys, we are on nested loops. A nested loop is just a loop that's inside of another loop. It doesn't matter what kind of loop you're working with, it can be a while loop or a for loop or whatever. Here's an example. We'll create a loop to count the numbers 1 through 10. We'll count to 10 3 times. So let's create a basic loop for now. Int I, I'll set this equal to be 1. The condition will be I is less than or equal to 10. Then I will increment I by 1. During each iteration, I will display whatever I is. Then I'll add a space. There. This loop will count up to 10. Just like that. So now I would like to count up to 10 3 times. Well, I can stick this loop in another loop. So let's create the outer loop. For int I, I'll set this equal to be 1. I'll continue this as long as I is less than or equal to 3. Then increment I by 1. So I'm going to take this loop and stick it within the curly braces of the outer for loop. However, you don't want these loops to have the same index. A common naming convention for the inner loop is to use j as the counting index. J, 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 j. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, now we count up to 10 3 times. But what I think I'm going to do is that every time we exit the for loop, the inner for loop, I'll just print a new line character. Standard output, new line. Yeah, that's much better. So yeah, nested loop is just a loop inside of another loop. Just as a practice project, let's create a program that will print a rectangle made out of symbols. We'll let a user specify how many rows and columns. We'll use our nested loop that we created previously. So we have int rows, int columns, then char symbol. We're going to ask for some user input. We'll need some prompts. Standard output, how many rows? Standard input, rows. Let's copy this, paste it. change rows to columns. Then enter a symbol to use. Standard input, symbol. We'll continue printing rows as long as I is less than or equal to rows, whatever we typed in. We don't want any more rows than what the user wants. The inner loop is going to be in charge of the columns. J is less than or equal to columns. In place of printing J, let's print our symbol, whatever the user picked. And we do not need to separate these with any spaces. All right, let's try this. How many rows? What about 3 rows? Then 6 columns. Enter a symbol to use. What about the @ sign? And there's our symbol, the column in. Add input to the rows. Let's copy this, paste it, change rows to columns. Then enter a symbol to use. Standard input, symbol. We'll continue printing rows as long as I is less than or equal to rows, whatever we typed in. We don't want any more rows than what the user wants. The inner loop is going to be in charge of the columns. J is less than or equal to columns. In place of printing J, let's print our symbol, whatever the user picked. And we do not need to separate these with any spaces. All right, let's try this. How many rows? What about 3 rows? Then 6 columns. Enter a symbol to use. What about the @ sign? And there's our rectangle. There's 3 rows and 6 columns. Let's try it one last time. How about 4 rows and 5 columns? I'll use a $sign. Okay, we have 4 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, everybody, that's a nested loop. It's a loop that's inside of another loop. When you'll use these, it really depends on the situation. I thought this would be a fun practice project. If you would like a copy of this code, I'll post this in the comment section down below. And well, yeah, those are nested loops in C++.